Welcome to the enLIGHTenUP podcast. I'm Lisa Watson and will be joined by my co-hosts Nicole Frolick and Brian Koenigberg. The enLIGHTenUP podcast is a weekly show that provides an unconventional and refreshing spin on spirituality, where three friends and weekly guests share informative, fun, and usually off-the-wall conversations. Unlike others, we provide fringe and skeptical viewpoints on all topics, because our experience has taught us that the echo chamber is a boring place from which to learn. So regardless of where you are in your spiritual journey, we can promise you're going to find a place to fit in here. So we invite you to grab a drink and listen in on our casual, entertaining, and hopefully enlightening conversation. And enLIGHTenUP is a self-funded podcast, so if you would like to help us to continue to be able to produce, enhance, and expand the show for our audience, then please send your support using the link in the show notes, or go to our website, enlightenup.us, and check out our merchandise shop, where you can purchase merchandise that will allow you to express some spiritual humor. You may also show your support by leaving us a review on iTunes and following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Thank you all so much for listening and supporting us. And now let's jump right into the episode.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the enLIGHTenUP podcast. I am here with Lisa and Rebecca Barfoot today. Rebecca has returned to the show. If you've missed any of her episodes, I highly suggest you go back and watch her. But for those of you who are new to the show, she is a multidimensional energy intuitive, seer, and channel. She awakened to spontaneous light language channeling several years ago, and she works with a powerful and playful team of elemental, indigenous, angelic, and galactic guides. She has starseed heritage of Syrian, Pleiadian, Lyran, and Andromedan origins, and she serves as a galactic ambassador to many star nations, delighting in the healing work she facilitates for a variety of extraterrestrial beings. Rebecca, welcome back to the show.
Yay, it's so good to be here.
For the second time. For the second time. So to our audience, we tried recording this episode a few days ago and we thought we had it all. Well, we thought we had it all and we lost the first half. So we are re-recording the first half and we're just going to let it flow. We may repeat ourselves in the second half, which we want to keep in that we still have because Rebecca had some channeled messages in there that were really key and we want you to have them. So just keep that in mind. There's going to be a two-parter to this, but we know you guys are super understanding of the technological issues that happen with high energy messages coming through. Lisa's been going through her own technological issues lately. And why don't you tell the audience, Lisa, what you've discovered, what that means for you?
Yeah, I feel like this whole thing is kind of my fault. I'm sorry. Well, when we were recording the episode with Rebecca the other, few days ago, we kept dropping and we tried a few different platforms to get it done. And finally, Brian and I just couldn't even do it anymore. So you guys had to kind of finish up without us. And then I'll just back up and say over the last, maybe 4 to 6 months, I have lost so much information. My computer or an external drive that I've had has failed. It happened again yesterday. That was the third time. And a few months ago, I lost every one of my emails, like my Gmail account that had 3 different folders and everything organized. I've literally watched them all disappear in front of my eyes. No explanation. I have no idea how you could ever recreate that or make it happen. And the drive that I had that failed yesterday was, I called it Lisa. It was an external drive that had all my business stuff on. And the way I'm interpreting this metaphor is that I just keep becoming a new version of myself. And I've just made so many changes over the last 6 months that it's like, every time I level up and move to that next level, everything in my computer crashes or leaves me and I start over. So it's like I'm dumping data and I'm starting over. So I'm a fresh new Lisa today. You met me before. Kind of exciting.
It is. Well, Rebecca, thanks so much for taking the time out again to come back and do this with us.
Welcome. No, as Lisa's talking, oh my God, I know that feeling, but I don't know if I know it that in depth, close and personal. So I'm commiserating and empathizing.
Well,
yeah, here we go.
Yeah, and you know, like this is kind of good in some ways because we never got to talk about the 1212 portal, which is happening the day we release this, and it's a pretty strong and potent portal. A lot of 12s involved, as well as Chiron, the wounded healer, going direct on the 12th. So, have you been feeling the energies, Rebecca, leading up to this portal?
It's hard to yes. I mean, there's so much moving in my life, but I'm like, is that, there's a lot going on my end. So the energies are definitely high. And, on the 11/11, I was like flattened in a good way by all the things that came through that day, both for myself and with clients. So, and on, right now as we're before and after, like the day before, the day after, and throughout, it's potent. I feel it's potent. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this goes today. And tell us a little, you want to give a little soundbite of what you brought through in your, I know you released a YouTube today on that, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I did it live yesterday.
Okay.
And it was interesting because while I was getting ready to do that live, some messaging started to come in about the children and the inner child, which is what we're going to be talking about on this episode. And I understand this 12/12 portal because 12 is a closing out number. There's 12 months in the calendar year. There are 12 astrological signs. Like it's very much holding like a closing out kind of energy, ending. So there is this closing out, this healing coming through, but I also get the sense that because we're closing out a decade as well, and we're moving into 2020, the year of perfect vision. I received a download during that broadcast that we're going to be seeing the world through the eyes of children, and we're going to be seeing ourselves through the eyes of children, because children have this, like, they're so perfect when we come in. We as beings, when we come into this life form, we're already perfect. There's no programming yet. There's no fears. There's none of that. And we see, you look at children and all they are love, and all they see is love. And I feel like we're going to have that opportunity to see that through the eyes of children. And so in many ways, 2020 is also the year about the child and the children.
I think it's a choice, that we need to start acting more like children. And we were talking about it today in a group that I was in about choices. Like children have choices, and they don't think about like the consequences it's like they're in this playground of having choices, where as we get older, we start thinking more in like this or that, or like I can't do this because of that, and we act more out of, from the ego, from the past, and out of fear, instead of just in this playground of like, what if I did this, or what if I did that, or, and opening up that field of, instead of having it packed with only certain possibilities or certain things that you can do, and that you just kind of bust that wide open. You say, but what if I try this, or what if I try that? And just see, acting more like a child in terms of like using your imagination and not coming from fear, and being more playful and less judgmental, all those types of things. Like, children aren't racist, they don't care about age, they don't care about gender, they don't care about color. They just want to have fun, and they want to play, and they want to interact with people. And to me, I feel like that's, what we're kind of getting pushed and moved towards. Like, we have to start thinking that way.
I agree with you.
It's hard to get to all of that. Yes.
Yeah. What have you been getting, Rebecca, about like the inner child lately?
Oh boy, for years, my client sessions were getting filled up with messages from their children, and I realized how important it was for the collective. It's important for our individual healing journey and our awakening journey to connect with what I call the kids inside, the child self in a lot of different manifestations, but for our collective awakening. And I think that's what Lisa's saying too. It's so needed now. And I think I hear you saying that about the 12-12 going back into, the wisdom of the child and the child's connection to soul. I feel like there's such a main line to language of the soul. And they are the creators and the scientists, inventors, magicians, poets, mystics, protectors, and very powerful guides. And they come to us with so much, like their hands are full of gifts, and some of it's our wounds that we, might want to look into deeper or need to understand better, or our gifts, or it's so many things, the power of pleasure and play and being nourished and to love and be loved. That if I had to say, what are they about? Bringing us back into that human imperative to love and be loved and to be accepted.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Like it's so potent. It's so, and I think about, Lisa, for instance, I keep thinking about this. I am so amazed at your artwork. Lisa's doing this, she's painting, which I think is part of like what your inner child's been really wanting to do, right?
Yes.
And you're painting blindfolded, and
I did.
What comes out is stunning.
This is so great. Oh.
Well, I did one and I posted it because I'm doing that 365-day challenge, doing something different every day. And so I posted one that I did blindfolded. I also posted one that I did right after that wasn't blindfolded. But Brian told me, he just kept raving. He's like, that's literally the best painting you've ever done. The one that I did blindfolded. And that was really cool because I realized after I did that, and I don't necessarily agree with him that it's the best painting, but I learned a lot while doing it blindfolded because I'm critical. We have this critic, this ever-running ego. And so when I'm painting and I do something, my inner critic says, oh, like you didn't color all the way in between the lines straight, or, you need to go over that again. And I feel like I'm always like kind of trying to fix stuff, and doing it blindfolded help me see that it's okay to just do it how you feel and not judge it to have to be something else. So I think some of my paintings going forward are going to be a little bit different because I want to allow myself to paint the way that I did when I was blindfolded without corrections.
I love it. And Rebecca, as like someone who is an incredible artist, like how does that land with you?
Oh, totally. Yeah. The kids want to, a lot of times when, like in my client sessions, when they're meeting their inner child, maybe for the first time, like they show them something that's creative that they've always longed to do. And maybe it's, they come with a paintbrush, or one of my clients learned light language through connecting with his inner child. And, that's been awesome to watch that unfold. So they have a main line to the creative thread, which is something, I guess we've already said this, we've been routed away from through our training in this particular timeline to lose contact with. It's kind of losing contact with these beautiful aspects of our own soul. And so we become separate, but this is a way to reconnect.
Well, let's talk about reconnecting with the inner child for our listeners who may not understand how to connect with their inner child. Like, what would your advice be or your guidance, Rebecca?
Yeah, that's a great question. Wow. I would say, first of all, just creating the space for which you can really be still and listen with curiosity and no expectation. So maybe if you're in meditation or you're, maybe you pick up a brush and ask them to come through. But I think the supplication first and foremost, to extend a hand and say, I really want to know you. I really want to know you. And then just sweeping away our adult mind. It's not that easy, but opening ourselves to a wisdom that might come through, an energy that might come through. And it might take a little while and it might not. You could look at a picture of yourself at a certain age. That can be a really useful aid. And just really look, really be with them, really see them. You might imagine, if you have a good visual inside, you might feel or see them sitting on your lap or just holding them. They really, upon first meeting, a lot of them, they just want to meet us again, and maybe they want to be, touched a little, or you'll feel it. You feel it. So there's so many different ways, and it's unique as per the individual. But that connection is definitely there for all of us, young or old, male or female. And the guy, one of the guys I'm working with he's probably in his 70s, and he was one of the ones who's learning light language through his little boy. So
that's amazing. It's so nice to hear more of the masculine tuning into that creative and feminine aspect within them that is so healthy.
Mm-hmm.
It's really nice.
Yeah, it's such a new language. I mean, I feel like my heart feels so just soft and tender as we're talking about all this. And for the magic we create together collectively when we tune in like this. Just a lot of emotion coming through. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the actual healing that can happen through working with your inner child or playing with your inner child, meeting, listening, all of that. What sort of healing can happen, and what really stands out that's been super potent through your observance with clients?
Yeah. Oh, wow. It's both sides of the spectrum of healing. Recognizing triggers, we could say healing, maybe some of our core wounds, and a lot of what comes up for many of us, and this includes myself in my work with my own children and my own girls that I work with, let's say, is not feeling seen or heard is a big one. I think running through the whole family of humanity. It's another human need, is to be seen and heard and known. And that is really healed, even upon first meeting. When you extend a hand to the child self, there's an enormous upwelling of reconnection, and that happens, and that is so healing right there. But also the recovery of our gifts, and like Lisa painting, like, wow, I never even knew I wanted to do this. I never knew I wanted to dance or make sound with my vocal cords, or go look at the sky or roll a reviews or something like that. They can show us a lot of emotions that we've had really stuck. Like my 4-year-old has been like working through a lot of wrath. Like, I am so angry. I mean, that's not her eternal stance, but letting me know, like, hey, this has been submerged for like a few decades. It's time to be with that. So, and again, it's somehow the kids are so healing to work with, because they teach us how to be with ourselves with curiosity rather than judgment. Really genuine connection there. A lot of ease, a lot of love, and a levity that is so accessible and available, even if we're working with deep dark material. There's workability to it because of the child aspect.
Well, that's actually really, I think, important to touch on, because I'm going through it, and I think some of the advice that's come through our sessions is really valuable for people to understand that when you're working with the inner child and you start to get to some of the trauma and some of the really painful stuff, and if someone, like, for instance, in my case, there's something really scary trying to surface that I've really repressed, but the guidance that came through was to focus more on just embracing the inner child and letting her know how loved she is, like really giving her that tender, loving, nurturing energy instead of worrying about the story. And so can you kind of like speak to that for the audience to understand why the story isn't as important as the actual emotional connection?
Yeah, this is great. Well, thanks for bringing that up. Well, yeah, so a lot of times in our adulting mind, the parent mind or whatever, the orchestrator, wants to come to a solution. So of course we're using our linear mind to get to an answer. We want to know what happened. We want the information, when really the kid just wants to talk about how he or she is feeling about it first. Maybe that is often the most important thing. Like, again, the need to be seen and heard. Can you just hold me? I have something scaring me, or I feel sad about. Or I'm pissed off about. Can you just be with me? I want you to see this first. And if we look at our adult conflicts, how much is getting lost in translation sometimes, because we're trying to figure out why things happen versus can we express the actual emotional content? Can we see each other and ourselves in whatever emotional aspect is coming forward, playing a voice? So I don't know if I answered the question, but yeah, the need to just experience the emotions, the energy of whatever's happening rather than the information around it.
I know for me, I've been doing a lot of work with the inner child, and it's more just about a moment to moment sort of thing, where it goes hand in hand with your triggers. Like the triggers are perfect to bring to your awareness those stuck feelings that your inner child so wants you to go back and feel, like you said. So it's like when a trigger happens, it's a rejoicing moment. It's like, oh, okay, how do you feel about this? And like, maybe she just wants to be sad, or maybe she just wants to cry, or maybe she just wants to get really pissed off. And instead of trying to, like Nicole said, not judging that anymore, and just allowing. It's just about allowing yourself to feel what it is that you feel, and comfort that inner child, and be there and let her know that she's safe, and basically like turning it off where it was turned on. So, if something like you weren't seen and you weren't heard as a small child, you're going to bring that back into your reality now of not being seen and not being heard. But now we're older and we have new tools, and we can say to our inner child, like this time we're going to show up differently. We're going to show up differently in this trigger. So when someone, speaks disrespectfully to us, or uses a tone, or whatever your trigger is, you can say, could you say that to me in a different way? Or you can choose to walk away and say, I'm not going to subject myself to this type of, energy or behavior. And you get to stand up for your inner child. And for me, that's what I've been doing, that I can feel she's starting to feel more safe all the time with me, because she's like, wow, you really are standing up for me. Like for all those years that you didn't, now you're using your voice. Now you're walking away. You're not letting people say things to you that you might have not even noticed were disrespectful in the past. Because that's one thing I've noticed as I've done this work, is I've become like, where I was desensitized to certain types of behavior, I now have more of an awareness over them. It's like if you're an abused child and you're always abused, or people are always talking down to you, that's the norm. So you might not even notice that that's happening around you, where your friend who, didn't experience that, she could be listening going, why would you let him talk to you that way? And you're like, what? And so I'm noticing things that I didn't notice before, and using my voice for my inner child. And I can just feel that connection is getting stronger. It's helping me feel more self-confident and more secure, and able to stay more in the present moment than I was able to before.
That's such good wisdom to pass on to our listeners. Like really powerful.
I want to ask, in our first recording that we did the other day that we lost, and I kept falling off and didn't get to hear a lot of it anyway, but Rebecca, you had mentioned something about there were 3 aspects of an inner child? Or
Oh, no. Oh, I was probably talking about my own experience and in the general gist of actually working with many different aspects of the child self. So I see them as individual, autonomous, and very independent beings. Like I see the child at 4 or 5 or 6, whether it's me or a client I'm working with. So there's many. And right now, I'm working with an infant and a 4-year-old and a 17-year-old the most. So that may have been what you were thinking of.
Yeah, we actually had a listener question. It was a 2-part question, and we actually forgot to answer the second part. So maybe this is a great time. The listener asked about the inner child, where she is experiencing that she has 3 inner childs show up to her at the same time often. And they're more like like each one has its own personality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah. That's absolutely, that's not uncommon. Did she have a question about that? Or
Yeah, she's just asking like why? Why that is. And then also, what does it mean when someone else shows up with their inner child?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Okay. So, well, the showing up with somebody is I'm introducing you to somebody we need to talk to, whether it's, like a twin flame or a friend or a family member we need to speak with, or someone who has passed. A lot of times that happens. I have one of my kids who is a bringer, like when I'm working as a medium, and she brings the dead person in to do the reading, for the client. So it's always introducing. It's an introduction that is needed, and it's safe when the kid brings them. We know it's safe for us to connect there.
Oh,
because they are the discerners. As I think Lisa was saying, they kind of have a main line to what is okay, where we sometimes as adults have gotten our radar skewed, our inner compass sometimes gets off. And like Lisa was saying, like, oh, I didn't realize that was not really a way I wanted to be talked to. Like the kids, I feel like they're always a trustworthy voice. So I think maybe I said previously, they're not just little kids who don't know anything. They're a main line to our truth in a lot of many, many powerful ways. So they're big. Their energy is big. So yeah, you tell your client to have a listen into whoever's coming in, that her child is bringing.
very cool. And that idea of having multiple inner childs, like, well, I've never had more than one show up, although recently this has been really interesting to me. My niece shows up with my inner child.
Oh, how fun.
And so my little niece, Nora, who's 3 years old, she's been showing up a lot. And I feel like she's bringing in a level of bravery and also an element of inquisitiveness that I think my own inner child is scared to fully let go right now, which is what I'm working with her on. So it's been interesting. So she's been bringing her in into my like meditations and stuff like that. And I also, you said before, like connecting, having a picture of yourself at different ages in your younger years is really helpful, because oftentimes I'm seeing certain outfits and hairstyles from the different ages of wherever I'm connecting with. And it's different every time. It's never the same. So there could be something within that time frame that is important to heal that you need to connect with. And so it makes total sense why you would have multiple variations of your inner child to connect with.
Yeah, well, and they can bring us back to real specific incidences too. Sometimes if that's something that we need, that we actually need to go back and look at or retrieve a gift from, or, heal in some way, or remember, or whatever purpose. Sometimes, I've been taken back into really happy memories, and to really sit with that, to it's like I'm in training with, at a cellular level, the felt sense of happiness, which is so beautiful. Like, that's lovely. If we feel like, oh, the inner child work is, it's all about, this big heavy resurrection of terrible wounds. I mean, there's this she takes me back to a place where we're like swimming in the sea, like a real memory.
Mm-hmm.
And, that washing through of this complete spontaneous, it's like rapture. I mean, it's like blast off. So I sit with that for a while, and that's pretty cool. Totally. So
I had I remember a time, it must have been like maybe 2 years ago, I was working with my inner child, and she brought me to the front house of the first house I lived in, and I saw her sitting on the front walk playing with my Snoopy snow cone maker. And I loved my Snoopy snow cone maker, and she was just so happy making it, whatever. And then I heard my dad call in from the backyard. And this is after I had done a lot of healing with my dad, like our relationship had transformed, and he had become really accepting of who I am and what I'm doing and all that stuff. And she ran through the door. She went through the front door, and I saw her running up the stairs, across the kitchen, out to the back porch. She ran down, and she just ran into his arms, and he picked her up, and he was swinging her around. And it was just really cool to see such a really joyous, and I remember seeing my little frog kiddie pool in the backyard. And so it's really interesting to be brought back to some of these memories, and also be enjoying the really happier times, or also seeing some shifts in the timeline because of the work that we've done now. Totally. With other relationships, and seeing it play out in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you can shift the timeline in a lot of ways. It's like, I see, healing going back in, and maybe we mentioned this on the last bit that we recorded, but the healing going back into, say, my childhood, but back into the ancestral realm and out into like siblings, or just, it's kind of wild what can then begin to happen, because we're going to the door and unlocking it, but then that vibration of healing and love can be extended to everywhere in your timeline and to the family line.
Yeah, talk about that, Rebecca, because we did talk about it in the first recording, and that got lost, about how this work goes into the ancestral lines and the bloodline karma.
Oh, okay. I forget what we said where. Yeah. So, wow. Well, I kind of just say that I've always seen with my own work, and then with clients too, a lot of times when we begin to go back, and maybe we are healing something that was difficult for us, and maybe it's a pattern that's really gotten passed down, or that other family members have struggled with, whether it's some kind of sexual abuse, or physical violence, or addiction in the family, any kind of negative malevolence going back for generations that may have been seeded from off-world beings. Maybe there's a bloodline entity, which I've seen in my own family, which is kind of creepy, but it really, if we have a clear intent for the healing to be passed down through the previous generations, then we are powerful co-creators, and if our intent is strong and clear around doing that, it can really reverb over time back into the bloodline and ancestral codes. So, it takes it to a new level, doesn't it? When you think about it like that.
I'm curious. Yeah. Can you talk about that bloodline entity? Like, what do you mean by that?
Oh, far out. Okay. Well, okay, it's going to get a little personal. So, working with some of my own early life, there's some really dark stuff that I'm excavating there that's taken me decades to get to, and I'm really struggling with wanting to see and not wanting to see. But over time, and a long apprenticeship to working with this pretty much nonstop, I was shown like the seed of malevolence planted by, I would say, off-world beings, and some of the dirty work being carried out through trauma-based mind control. in the family, and passed down and seeing generations of this and how it was being done with basically dark ritual and mind control, and some of it was influenced by off-world beings. So it's sort of the light to keep it there. But does that kind of explain a little bit? I mean, it's
okay.
Looking at the bigger picture of humanity. Yeah.
Yeah. So what you're saying, so I was just, I don't want you to go somewhere personal where you're not ready to go.
No,
but
no, it's fine.
This idea of there can be certain entities that are infiltrating certain bloodlines is it more to manipulate the bloodline or keep it in a vibration?
Low vibration. And so, yeah, I mean, we think about the Illuminati families, let's say, for example, and why are these certain things perpetuated through a family? Well, it's so certain beings can feed off the energy, and the energy is being drained, passed on through trauma, and then the vibration, the dense vibration of whatever happens when there is a trauma, which is intense. That you have a sexual trauma or something else from a ritual, and that scrambles the wires for a lifetime. And so being an entity, let's say, is kind of the hench person, like, the assist for the off-world beings, can come in and feed and kind of be the main line to get the energy, the life force energy, which is being drained from you or from someone in the family.
I see.
Off where let's call them the controllers want to feed off of it. Mm-hmm. Does that make more sense? It's sort of like, what are we talking about? Like, that sounds nutty, but
no, I mean, we like nutty over here.
Bring on the nutty.
Where's Brian?
I know, poor Brian.
I actually wish Brian.
Where's Brian? He's missing a good.
Because I wanted him to tell his story of his inner child that he told us the other day, Nicole.
I know.
Yeah. Well,
you want to tell it?
I guess I'll tell it for him. But he recently decided that it was a good idea to connect with his inner child, which, he describes it as that he's had locked in the closet for, 30, 40 years, whatever it is. And when you first start out, like, you just don't really know what you're doing. You're just like, okay, inner child, are you in there? Like, sorry, I abandoned you. And you just, you don't really know what you're doing. And so he's just been talking to his inner child. And he said he got into bed one night and he was lying there and he realized, oh, darn, like, I don't think I've connected with my inner child for several days. So he said he saw, like, not with his eyes visually, but he described it as being more like an energy that kind of peeked around the corner in the bedroom. And he felt that it was really real, like that there was this energy there. And he started to have a conversation with his inner child. And as he was describing it to Nicole and I, he was saying, I know it wasn't just me. It wasn't like me having a conversation with myself. I really felt like I was having a conversation with someone else that was interacting with me. And so he had this conversation and then he got really tired and he said he dozed off to sleep. And then he woke up suddenly and he was like, oh no, like, are you still there? And he said it was just silence. And he's like, and I know that if it was me having the conversation with myself, I would have just answered myself back, but nobody was there and it was just silent. So then he said, oh, I thought, well, maybe I'll have a conversation with someone else. And he was like, maybe I'll have one with my ego. And then he said, oh no, fuck that. I'm not talking to my ego.
That happens. Yeah. That happens on a daily, consistent basis.
Yeah. Moment to moment. Your ego can go in the closet. So he's like, oh, maybe my higher self will talk to me. And he said, and as soon as he said that, a voice popped in and he knew he was talking to his higher self. So he had a kind of a vision after asking his higher self a question. But I thought that was really cool from someone like Brian, his experience and his willingness to work with his inner child. And just for people who have never done this type of work and you feel like, oh, that just sounds a little weird, or I don't know, or, just just do it. Just start asking yourself questions and see what happens. You may be surprised.
It's like what Rebecca said in the beginning, like, don't have any expectations, just go in curious.
Right, because your child is curious and your child just wants to be recognized, They just
gosh.
They want you to know that they're there. They want you to acknowledge their pain and their emotions and their feelings that we have just shut off for so long to be, the good girl or the good boy or the survivor or, the good student or, whatever it is that we've just pushed those feelings away and we haven't felt them. And our inner child's like stuck holding them. And that's what sabotages our life. That's why we can't manifest what we want. We get these mixed manifestations and these triggers and all that. It's all held. Our inner child holds all of it and all our gifts.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Absolutely.
Well said. Well said.
Absolutely. Well, Rebecca, thank you so much for coming back on to do part 1 again with us. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And on to part 2.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
Okay.
to our listeners, the next part will commence shortly. Lisa won't be with us. I think Brian pops in momentarily. They think they get a connection and then they drop out right away. But so just bear in mind this isn't going to have the same flow our show usually does, but the information is super valuable. So we're bringing it in. So what you're going to hear now is part 2 with Rebecca and myself. Okay, yeah, so we've got a few technical difficulties happening here. We don't know, Rebecca, if it's the information that we're sharing that they don't want out there. Brian and Lisa will shortly be back. But do you want to continue?
Yeah. Boy, we were talking about the thread of, how does this relate to newer teachings? And I was speaking on, just the generation of compassion in our world rather than aggression, and how this, in a humble way, is actually bringing not only our inner child, but the collective child into synergy with the vibration, we could say, of love. The child has been used for nefarious purposes in our world for millennia. It's because they're potent. And when we bring them back into the positive light, huge changes emerge across society, I feel. So it leads us back into unity.
Can you go into detail as to why they use the children or the child to...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, why the the matrix or the controllers, or however you want to call it, a lot of stuff there. Well, because children are innocence, and if we're beings that have lost contact with our own soul, the soul and the child are almost synonymous there. If the child is innocence, is creativity, is life force itself, and rejuvenation. Well, why would, if a being that is not serving the highest good, for example, has lost touch with the soul, then they might want to use the energy of a child to get it back, or some kind of ritual happens so that they can take the child's energy. And then this produces mass distortions in the culture. It's really hard to talk about that stuff. It's tough stuff for us to bring up in the world now, but it's actually so happening and been happening, and it's like trigger. Like, okay, don't talk about it. People don't want to hear about it, but that's the thing. It continues when we don't put light on it.
Yeah, I'm seeing more than ever now. When you really start to wake up to what's kind of going on and how the child is used, and when I say that, I mean in general sense, through the collective, how the child is used to destroy the value and belief system internally from such a young start point that it will then infiltrate into all of the ways we interact with the world. I just see now more than ever how and why it's so important to protect our children at this current time, like in coming in, like leaving 2019 and going into 2020, why we need to so much protect our children and the innocence of children?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, Nicole. It's so true. I mean, like I have like like that shivery feeling of yes, 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 as you're talking and speaking on this, as we're talking about it, there's such a dynamic yes happening in my whole body. It is so true. Like, so reiterating that, you know, when we do this singular work with ourselves, with the child and our child selves, that resonates and reverbs across the whole collective. And the more of us doing it, the higher the vibration becomes for our whole society. In the systems, you know, the negativity dissipates. So we start to regain our collective power, which I think is totally revolutionary.
Yeah, I think, you know, when I was growing up, you know, through like my teenage years and my 20s, I didn't really think it was that big of a deal, you know, the innocence of a child. And perhaps that was, you know, some of my own pain coming through and not really feeling very healed without ever having any conscious awareness of that. But you're right. The more I do work with my inner child and the more I heal that, the more I start to see how important preserving the child's experience through those years is, and protecting that innocence. And you're right. As more of us do that and we do our own healing, that does reverberate across the entire collective, and it starts to shift the way we allow, or I should say not allow, this system, this matrix to destroy that.
Yeah. Yes, again. It's so great. And because we become empowered. It's about, you know, empowering all of our life force energy to become cohesive and coherent in us as adults. So we can self-actualize. Self-actualization is the last thing the matrix wants of us. You know, if the child is the root and the seed and the blossom, you know, if you cut that off in early life and create a lot of confusion or, you know, introduce abuse there in many forms, any form at all, then the adult is going to be stuck. And so we're just healing collective wounds. And also we're bringing in collective gifts, because I think I said at the beginning, it's about working with our wounds and healing, but it's also about working with our gifts. I mean, when I think about, you know, children are very deeply sensitive, empathic, and childhood is connected to the intuitive realm.
Ooh, yes. Let's talk about that, because that actually came up in my last session, which I didn't, you know, when I think about it, I'm like, well, how come you didn't know that, Nicole? But, you know, it just didn't dawn on me. You know, sometimes we don't connect the dots and they're right in front of us. But I think the audience might be interested to understand this. I'm sure some of them already do. Yeah. But this idea of, you know, when we talk about our intuitive gifts coming more online, coming more to the forefront, really strengthening, one of the things that came through for me was because I wasn't listening to the inner child, I was shutting it out. I didn't want to see something. I didn't want to hear anything. That was actually because I was putting up a block there. It was blocking also intuitive gifts from coming in, certain things that are trying to merge and emerge. And I think, can we talk about that? How healing the inner child actually turns on more of our intuitive gifts as well?
Totally. I think you said it. It does. Well, you know, the kids communicate in a different language. And I think I said that, you know, it's not always in linear adult language. Sometimes it very much is, but it's through, they're mystical kids. And if we go back into some of our memories, may find like, oh, I totally lived in an intuitive realm until, like, I don't know, I went to school and then I had to learn all this other stuff and I kind of forgot. But, so we start to bring that in, that main line of intuition. And so that's what working with my own, I call them my girls. As my 4-year-old and 6-year-old share things with me about galactic contact that we had early in life. And also the kids can connect us with star families and lots of they just help us get our vision back, our knowing, our the power that comes through that intuition that we actually all have, regardless of, you know, whether we consider ourselves indigo children. It doesn't make any difference. We all have this, and just we lose our way. Again, with the training, we are all kind of indoctrinated in, you might not be able to hear that voice anymore. So that's powerful when we sort of like right brain, left brain, not entirely, but we're trained to be quite linear. And so the intuitive language, when I'm coaching somebody to get their intuition going and get their own clairsentience on tap again. We do work with the child, the inner children, to help bring that back. And they're spontaneous. The kids they want to paint and they want to dance and they want to sing, and all those things help us get in touch with the creative side as a deep union with the intuitive side.
Yeah, I think I saw a post about that on Facebook, and I'm trying to think about who I saw. Maybe it was Jessica Alstrom who posted it, or someone about how painting alone within just a few minutes, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, completely shifts the vibration of where you're in, and also activates or connects you into like a more intuitive aspect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I spent 25 years as a professional studio artist, and I always joke, I think it was just training me to become a seer and a psychic. So totally. I don't know how I got away with that, but I'm so grateful. Sometimes for me on my own personal journey, I think, well, what would have happened if I had, whatever XYZ choice that I had made? I'm so grateful. Even though I always, the oddball me, that feeling, I'm so glad that things have worked out in this way.
Yeah. Oh, look, we have Brian and Lisa.
Have Brian and Lisa here again?
They're back.
No, our internet is absolute shit, and we can hear every other word.
Oh no! This is what happens when you upgrade.
This is.
Oh dear. Okay, so they've dropped off again. Rebecca, would you be open or able to see if there are any galactic messages about the inner child that want to be shared at this time?
Oh, I will. Let me put my different hat on here. Okay. Oh, okay. So it's don't see the children as small and impotent. See them as your biggest, highest, brightest way showers on the way to the union of your human family. This is important work to be done now. Don't think it is only humble. Think it is powerful, because you are powerful and you are showing the way. You are all way showers into the new light of the new earth and on into the eternal realms. Oh,
wow.
Oh, you have all the tools you need for the journey. So, very sweet.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that concept of viewing them as powerful and not small and fragile.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm talking about my 4-year-old, my 4-year-old alter. She is one of my most powerful guides, actually. And it's sort of like I had to untrain my belief systems around what a child could be of that age. So she shows me things. She's the bringer in a lot of my sessions, who shows me when there's a dead person, a person who has passed, who's coming in for a client, for example, when I'm doing medium work, or will show me a new galactic, or she kind of grabs me by the elbow and tugs and says, look, very true. And my 17-year-old has been trained as a shaman. This happened a couple years ago. I saw her training with my parents from an indigenous life. And she is now like a medicine healer. And so she is like, get out of my way. I mean, she's way more strong in her voice than I am. I'm like a meek, whatever, Rebecca. And she's like, goddess person. I don't even know what happened to her. So I feel like I've been training with her now. It's quite potent.
Ooh, wow. So how are you working to merge her in so that that's all in union?
Yeah, well, we're working on it. It's I turn to her for guidance a lot, actually. It's that time of my life, I was going through a suicidal period, like not aware of all the abuse that had happened to me, that I was then taking out on myself and self-hatred. And it's interesting that it speaks of our vulnerability and strength. The kids bring us our vulnerability. They bring us our most powerful self too. So merging those, the most vulnerable aspect of my life, and later on, my late 40s now, is merging this, wow, from the deepest depths of horror came the most powerful vision I could have for myself. So it's being integrated slowly. Sometimes I turn to her and say, can you help me say something smart on the podcast? She's like, yeah, no problem. That's not a problem. You don't need me to do that. She shows me the way when I get a little lost, for sure.
Oh my goodness. That's so cute. Because from my perspective, I'm like, how could you, like, everything you say is so incredibly powerful and wise and intelligent. So that's so interesting. And so thank you for being vulnerable and
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's something I'm definitely going through right now, just admitting my vulnerabilities and where I put on the facade of being strong, but I'm actually not.
Well, and there we go, back into New Earth. One of the things, as I kind of move through some conflicts with people in recent months, in my own life, it's like, okay, well, if I'm going to model something that I want to see in the world, what is it? It's actually being very vulnerable. Like, I have to be the one first who's going to express my feelings. I have to be in touch with those feelings and needs, and then be able to express my feelings and needs in an articulate and skillful way, with the other party. So just teaching myself new skills to connect. So that helps me move forward into doing something better, just for the planet and for myself, my own life.
And I think this idea too of being vulnerable and connecting that to the New Earth teachings, that is very much a part of us taking off all the masks that we've been wearing and really allowing that more raw and authentic part of us to come forward, because we will all start connecting from that place. I just feel like we'd be making leaps and bounds, like quantum leaps in ultimate healing on a collective level.
Totally. Oh, Nicole, so well said. So well said. Yeah, it does. I'm so grateful as we're talking for my practice that teaches, meditation practice is what I mean by that. I'm holding space for myself to be so naked. And it's helped me over the years become more that way. And to me, I'm always challenged to come out of hiding. I had a moment today where I was like, maybe the podcast will be close. If you've been to my YouTube channel, you know that I have never put my face up there. I always put a recording up. So it's like the work I do in the world now really challenges me to come out of hiding. And because in my early life training, it was like, stay hidden, you'll be safe. You're bad, you're in trouble, bad things are happening to you. It's because you are bad. So I've had to work so much in my life to come out and regain my power. I'm sure that's when my 17-year-old was trained by my past life parents to be a healer and a woman of power. So I have a long way to go still, right? But thank you for letting us talk about vulnerability. So important as we move forward, and like the teaching to remind myself of and all of us. It's okay to be vulnerable. That's the human condition.
Yeah, and I think it's why I was so nudged by my internal guidance system to do the Raw and Real series that I've initiated and doing that live. Like like there's no editing, and it's just coming out, like, and whatever comes out is just what it's gonna be. And it's scary, I've been doing this podcast for over 2.5 years. We've got well over 125 episodes. I have over 200 videos on my YouTube channel, and for some reason, these Raw and Real videos, when I do them, I am so terrified. Like I am really terrified. I start I start sweating before I get online. I start having to like really pump myself up. Like you can do this. And I'm just thinking to myself, where is this coming from? Because everything else is so easy. This podcast has become very easy for me, which is great. I'm very grateful for that. My YouTube channel is whatever it is, whether it's tarot readings or just regular, it's very easy for me. But this raw and real series that I'm doing, it is pulling something up that I didn't know was there inside of me that was so scared.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And don't you feel like that's such a universal too? We all have this shaky place inside. You could appear as the biggest, toughest guy on the block and still have this the inner child gets us into that place and gets us to be okay with exploring it a little. It's okay. This is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Who am I really beneath all the masks, as you said?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, what have you got going on that some of our listeners, if they want to get in contact with you, are you doing any community readings or community workshops?
I am mostly doing private sessions right now. So there will be more community stuff in the new year. But there is an inner child healing session available exclusively on my website that is just devoted to this particular work that we're talking about today. Okay.
So people can go to your website, RebeccaRoseBarfoot.com, and check that inner child session out.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And for those of you who don't know, Rebecca and I are collaborating together on a oracle deck, and it's quite fun. Rebecca, you just inspire me. Your artwork is so gorgeous. For those of our listeners who don't realize or know, Rebecca is very much a beautiful artist. Her work just speaks on such a deep spiritual level. And I feel so honored to be collaborating with you on an oracle deck.
Thank you. I'm excited about it. Going by the oracle deck project.
Hopefully we'll be able to release that sometime in 2020 as we work on it. And it's beautiful. Rebecca, do you want to leave our audience off with any message that's intuitively coming in right now that you think is important for the audience to hear?
Oh boy. Yeah, what is coming in the most? We covered so much great stuff already. Oh. It's light language again. Don't forget, everyone on the planet can go back into their life and begin to love themselves, have a brand new start. This is the way you reclaim the power of the people. Yeah, it's self-love. Self-love is the message.
Self-love.
Love blooms on this earth. Yeah. All right. Oh, thank you so much for having me, Nicole.
No, thank you so much for being on. And self-love is one of our greatest responsibilities on this spiritual path. It's the biggest one that I think we have to learn, because everything really stems from that place. So that message is beautiful. And for everyone who's here and Rebecca does Akashic record sessions. You can go into your Akashic records. She does incredible healing. She does channeling. She's my go-to girl when I need some work done and I need some healing. So just want to let you guys know, if you want to book any sessions with Rebecca, I highly, highly suggest her. And I know Lisa's done some work with you. Unfortunately, Lisa and Brian have had some technical difficulties.
They're not here.
Yeah, we're sorry they're not here. But this is what happens when you upgrade your internet, I guess. And then you have high frequency vibes like they do going through their house. Maybe it's not meshing. I don't know. But to our audience, if you want to reach out to Rebecca, please go to her website, RebeccaRoseBarfoot.com, and you can book sessions with her there. And follow her on Facebook as well, or YouTube, her YouTube channel, because I'm sure she's going to be putting out more information soon. And to all of our listeners, also for you guys, I don't know if you're aware, but I'm also doing a coaching giveaway. So for those of you who are interested, I'm giving away a 1-month coaching program to 5 different people. And I've already given away the first one. And if you guys are interested and you want a chance to win, all you need to do is join my alchemy program. And I'll leave that link in the description below for you guys who don't know. But if you're interested in kind of having some coaching one-on-one and you're, sometimes the funds aren't available, and especially coming up to this time of year, but you want to really invest in yourself. I've giving those away for you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all the listeners for tuning in. Sure.
Yeah. Thanks so much, guys. You guys have a great month and or have a great week, I should say. And next week we'll be back with Mary Ducina. She will be giving us some information on the astrological forecast for 2020. And if you have any questions that you would like her to answer, please send those in to us no later than noon Eastern time on December 13th, okay? Because that's when we'll be recording with her. Thanks so much, Rebecca, for coming on the show, and thank you to our audience. We will be back with you next time.
Bye.
Thank you all for joining our show. We appreciate you tuning in and supporting us. If any of you have any questions you would like answered on the show or any guests that you would like to hear on our show, please email that information to us at info@enlightenup.us or send us a voice message using the Anchor app. There's a super cool feature on there that allows you to send us a message or ask us a question with a touch of a button right from the app. And please continue to support us by following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And if you haven't checked out Nicole's channel on YouTube yet, head on over there for some more insight from her, or you can visit her website, inflexibleme.com, where you can book a personal coaching session or a tarot reading, watch some of her most informative videos, or you can sign up for her newsletter. And if you're interested in some light language healing, head to my YouTube channel, lisaloveslove.com, or send me an email to lisa@lisaloveslove.com to inquire about your own personal reading. Thank you again for joining us and supporting us, and we'll be back with you all next week.